I hide my $55,000 monthly salary from my son. His wife declared, "Your poor mother is embarrassing us. I don't want to live with her." I quietly packed my things and left. A month later, I did something that made them turn pale. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. For 23 years, I had built my career in silence. My modest clothes, my old Honda, my habit of clipping coupons, all carefully maintained. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. My salary as a senior financial consultant at Morrison & Webb reached $55,000 per month, but nobody in my family knew. Why would they? I had learned early that money changes people, and I wanted my son Jason to build his own life, his own success, without leaning on mine. After my husband died 7 years ago, I'd thrown myself into work. The empty house felt too large, too quiet. When Jason called last spring, asking if I'd consider moving in with him and his wife Crystal to help with their newborn daughter Emma, my heart leapt. A chance to be useful again, to be near my granddaughter, to fill the silence with family laughter. "We could really use your help, Mom," Jason had said, his voice warm. "Crystal's overwhelmed, and we thought, well, you're retired now, right?" I wasn't retired. I worked from home 3 days a week and went to the office twice, but I said nothing. Let them think what they wanted. I packed my essentials and moved into their spacious home in the suburbs of Atlanta, taking the small guest room on the first floor. The first month was sweet. I woke early to prepare breakfast, changed diapers, did laundry while taking client calls from the nursery. Crystal seemed grateful, even friendly. Jason would come home from his job at the car dealership and find a clean house, a cooked dinner, a sleeping baby. "Mom, you're amazing," he'd say, kissing my forehead. But small things began to shift. Crystal started leaving longer lists of chores. "Since you're home anyway," she'd say, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. The requests multiplied. Deep clean the bathrooms, reorganize the pantry, hand wash her delicate clothes. I complied, believing this was temporary, that I was helping my son's young family find its footing. Then came the comments about my appearance. "Elizabeth, maybe don't wear that old cardigan when my friends come over," Crystal suggested one morning, her nose wrinkling. I looked down at my comfortable wool sweater, 15 years old, but perfectly maintained. "It's just, you know, we have a certain image to maintain." Image? In their modest 3-bedroom rental, I began noticing other things. Crystal's designer handbags, new every month. Jason's talk of upgrading to a luxury SUV they couldn't afford. Credit card bills left carelessly on the counter showed balances that made my financial consultant brain scream in alarm. They were drowning in debt, living far beyond their means, and somehow that made my thrift embarrassing to them. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in November. Crystal's sister Madison was visiting, and I overheard them in the kitchen while I folded laundry in the adjacent room. "I can't believe Jason makes you live with his mother," Madison said, her voice dripping with pity. "That's so awkward." "Tell me about it," Crystal replied. "And she's practically a maid. I mean, what else is she going to do? It's not like she has money or a real life. Jason feels guilty, because she's so poor." My hands stilled on Emma's tiny onesie. "Poor? Does she even contribute to bills?" Madison asked. "Are you kidding? She probably lives on like $800 a month Social Security. We're basically supporting her. Jason's too sweet to admit it's a burden. But God, I'm tired of having his broke mother shuffling around my house in those pathetic clothes." I should have walked away. Instead, I stepped into the kitchen doorway. Both women turned, Crystal's face flickering with something. Surprise, perhaps, but not shame. Crystal started, but her sister interrupted. "Oh, Elizabeth, we were just talking about how helpful you've been." Madison's smile was saccharine, false. Crystal straightened, and something cold settled in her eyes. The mask dropped. Actually, since you're here, we need to talk. This arrangement isn't working anymore. Well, frankly, you're becoming an embarrassment. My friends see you in those clothes, doing chores like some kind of servant, and they pity us. They think we can't afford real help. Your presence here, this whole poor mother thing, it's making us look bad. The words hit like physical blows. Jason asked me to. Jason felt sorry for you. Crystal cut me off, her voice sharp now, unleashed. But honey, let's be real. You're a burden, a broke, elderly burden who has nowhere else to go. And honestly, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want my daughter growing up thinking it's normal to have her desperate, penniless grandmother living here like some kind of charity case. It's humiliating for all of us. The kitchen fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Madison looked uncomfortable now, but Crystal held my gaze, chin lifted, daring me to argue. Something inside me, something I'd kept carefully restrained for decades, went very, very cold. I see, I said quietly. I'll start packing tonight. I packed in silence that night while Jason was still at work. Crystal didn't offer to help, didn't apologize, didn't even check on me. I heard her laughing on the phone in the living room, probably telling Madison how she'd finally gotten rid of the dead weight. My hands shook as I folded clothes into my old suitcase. Not from shame. I had nothing to be ashamed of. But from the sheer betrayal of it. I had given up my quiet, comfortable solitude to help them. I had scrubbed their toilets, cooked their meals, cared for their child while they slept in on weekends. And this was how my son's wife saw me? As an embarrassment? A burden? Where was Jason in all this? Did he know what Crystal had said? Did he agree? That thought hurt most of all. I had raised Jason alone after his father died when he was 12. I'd worked double shifts, sacrificed vacations, gone without so he could have new shoes and college tuition. I'd never once made him feel like he owed me anything. And now his wife called me a penniless charity case while he— What? Said nothing? Allowed it? I sat on the edge of the narrow guest bed, my suitcase half packed, and let myself feel the full weight of it. The loneliness, the rejection, the casual cruelty of being dismissed by people who thought they were superior to you. But underneath the hurt, something else began to kindle. Something sharp and cold and calculating. They thought I was poor. They thought I was desperate. They thought I had nowhere to go and no options. They had constructed an entire narrative about my life without ever asking me a single question about it. Crystal had never wondered why I retired early at 58. Jason had never asked to see my financial statements. They'd simply assumed, based on my old car and modest clothes, that I was barely surviving. The irony would have been funny if it didn't sting so much. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The numbers glowed in the darkness. $847,000 in investments, $223,000 in savings, $190,000 in my 401k. The house I'd told Jason I sold to pay off medical bills? I still owned it. I'd renovated it last year and rented it out for $3,200 a month. My monthly income, between salary, rental property, and investment dividends, averaged around $63,000. I was not poor. I was not desperate. I was not a burden. I was a woman who had been profoundly underestimated. The bedroom door opened. Jason stood there, still in his dealership polo, looking uncomfortable. Mom? Crystal said you're leaving? Yes. I kept my voice steady, neutral. She said there was some Misunderstanding? That maybe you overreacted? He wouldn't meet my eyes. So he knew. He knew what she'd said, and he was here to smooth it over, to convince me to stay and continue being their free nanny and maid. There was no misunderstanding, Jason. Crystal made her feelings very clear. I'm an embarrassment to her, a burden. She doesn't want me in her home. She didn't mean it like that, Mom. She's just stressed with the baby and— Does she speak for you? I interrupted. Is this what you think of me too? He flinched. Of course not. You're my mother. I love you. But maybe it would be better if you had your own space. You could visit whenever you want, and you could save on childcare while not having to defend me to your wife? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Jason's face flushed. That's not fair. No, I agreed, zipping my suitcase. It's not. Where will you even go? He asked, and there it was, the assumption. The belief that I had no options. I'll figure it out, I said simply. He left without hugging me goodbye. I finished packing and carried my bags to my car. The house was dark except for the flickering light of the TV in the master bedroom. Neither of them came out to say goodbye. I loaded my Honda and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, staring at the house where my granddaughter slept, where my son had chosen his cruel wife over his mother. Then I started the engine and drove to my real home, the house they thought I'd sold, the house I'd kept and renovated, the house that represented everything they didn't know about me. As I pulled into the driveway of my beautiful 3-bedroom Craftsman with its new kitchen and refinished hardwood floors, a plan began to form. Not revenge, exactly, but certainly a reckoning. They wanted me gone. They'd get their wish. But first, they were going to learn exactly who they'd dismissed. The next morning, I called my attorney, Martin Schuster. We'd worked together for years. He handled my real estate transactions and had drafted my will. Elizabeth, good to hear from you, he said warmly. What can I do for you? I need to revise my estate planning documents, I said, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Through the window, I could see my garden, dormant for winter, but carefully maintained. My sanctuary. Complete overhaul. Of course. What changes are we making? Remove Jason as primary beneficiary. Remove him as executor. I want to set up a trust. Very specific terms. Can you come by this afternoon? There was a pause. Martin had met Jason several times. Elizabeth, I have to ask, is everything all right? This is a significant change. Everything is fine, I assured him. I'm just making sure my assets go where they'll do the most good. I'll explain when you get here. He arrived at 2 o'clock with his briefcase and tablet. I'd prepared documents of my own, bank statements, investment portfolios, property records. Martin's eyebrows rose as I laid them out. I had no idea you were sitting on this much, he said, clearly impressed. Your son doesn't know? My son thinks I'm poor, I said flatly. His wife recently made that very clear. They've been treating me like a charity case they're too kind to throw out. Until they did throw me out. Understanding dawned on Martin's face. I see. And now you want to ensure that their assumptions have lasting consequences. Not consequences. Reality. I want to leave the bulk of my estate to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing careers in finance. I want my house to go to a women's shelter upon my death. Jason can have my personal effects and $50,000. That's more than generous considering he makes decent money and has simply chosen to live beyond his means. Martin made notes. What about your granddaughter? A separate education trust. $500,000, accessible only for verified educational expenses. Tuition, books, housing at accredited institutions. Parents cannot touch it. Independent trustee administers it. Smart, Martin approved. And if your son contests, I'll include a no contest clause. If he challenges the will, he gets nothing. We worked for 3 hours, restructuring everything. When Martin left, I had new documents that reflected my true wishes, not the wishes of someone who felt obligated to leave everything to an ungrateful child, but the wishes of a woman who wanted her hard-earned money to actually help people. That evening, my phone rang. Jason. "Hey, Mom," he said, trying to sound casual. "How are you settling in?" "Fine." "Where are you staying? You never said." They were curious now. Probably worried I was in some seedy motel, and their guilt was kicking in. "I'm comfortable," I said, giving nothing away. "Well, the thing is, Crystal feels bad about how things went down. She wants to apologize. Maybe you could come over for dinner this weekend." "See Emma?" I closed my eyes. The manipulation was so obvious. They didn't want to apologize. They wanted to confirm I was properly humbled and struggling so they could feel magnanimous about taking me back under their terms. "I'll think about it," I lied. "Great. How about Saturday, 6 o'clock?" I agreed, already knowing I wouldn't go. But Friday afternoon, something happened that changed everything. My phone buzzed with an alert from my bank. Someone was attempting to access my accounts. I called the fraud department immediately. "Ms. Morrison, we blocked the attempt," the representative assured me. "Someone used your name, social security number, and date of birth to try to add themselves as an account holder. They claimed to be calling on your behalf due to medical issues." My blood went cold. "Who was it?" "A woman named Crystal Morrison. She said she was your daughter-in-law and had power of attorney due to your declining mental health." I was silent, absorbing this. Crystal had tried to access my bank accounts. She'd lied about having power of attorney. She'd claimed I was mentally incompetent. "Ms. Morrison, are you all right?" "I'm fine," I managed. "What information did she have access to?" "None. We require in-person verification for those changes. She became agitated when we refused and hung up." "I want a note on all my accounts. No one but me, in person with 2 forms of ID, can make any changes. No exceptions." "Absolutely. I'm flagging everything now. And, Ms. Morrison, you might want to consider filing a police report. This was attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person. That's a serious crime." After I hung up, I sat very still. Crystal wasn't just cruel, she was calculating. She'd insulted me, thrown me out, and then immediately tried to steal from me, believing I was a helpless old woman with just enough Social Security to be worth the effort. She had no idea what she'd just done. I called Martin again. "I need to add something to my estate plan," I said. "And I need you to recommend a good private investigator. I want to know everything about Crystal's finances and background. Every credit card, every loan, every lie." "Elizabeth," Martin said carefully, "what exactly are you planning?" "I'm planning to protect myself," I said, "and to make very, very sure that the truth comes out." The private investigator, a sharp woman named Rita Chen, delivered her report within 10 days. I read it at my kitchen table, my coffee growing cold as the pages multiplied. Crystal Vance, she'd kept her maiden name on financial documents even after marriage, had a history. 3 maxed-out credit cards in her name alone, totaling $67,000. 2 personal loans Jason knew nothing about, based on forged income statements. A previous engagement to a man in Florida she'd bled dry before moving to Georgia. Small-scale fraud charges dropped after she paid restitution, and the victim declined to prosecute. My son had married a con artist, and he had no idea. But the most damning discovery: Crystal had been systematically stealing from Jason's parents' life insurance payout that was supposed to be in a trust for Emma. She'd convinced Jason to make her co-trustee, then had been withdrawing funds for baby expenses that went straight to her personal credit cards. Of the $50,000 trust, only $12,000 remained. I made copies of everything and scheduled another meeting with Martin. "This is enough to press charges," he said grimly. Financial exploitation, fraud, possibly identity theft given the bank incident. Not yet, I said. First, Jason needs to know who he married. If I go to the police now, he'll think I'm vindictive. He'll defend her. Instead, I did something more direct. I sent the complete report to Jason's work email, not his personal one Crystal might monitor, with a simple subject line, "You need to see this about Crystal." Then I waited. The response came faster than I expected. My phone exploded with calls and texts. First Jason, then Crystal, then both from unknown numbers when I blocked them. I ignored every attempt for 2 days. Finally, they showed up at my house. I watched through the window as Jason and Crystal climbed out of his car, her face twisted with rage, him looking confused and desperate. I opened the door before they could knock. "You had no right!" Crystal shrieked immediately. "No right to invade my privacy, to spread lies about me." "Is it lies?" I asked calmly. "Because I have documentation for everything, bank statements, court records, credit reports." Jason looked between us, pale. "Mom, where did you even get the money to hire an investigator? And why would you—" "Where do you think I got the money, Jason?" I kept my voice level. "Where do you think I've been living?" "In my house. The one you thought I sold. The one that's worth $480,000 and generates rental income from a tenant who lives in the addition." He stared at me. "What?" "Your mother is loaded," Crystal spat. "She's been playing poor this whole time while secretly hoarding money. She's the fraud, not me." "I earned every penny of my money," I said. "Unlike you, who forged documents to take out loans, who's been stealing from your own daughter's trust fund, who tried to access my bank accounts by claiming I was mentally incompetent." Jason's head snapped toward Crystal. "What is she talking about?" "She's lying. She's a bitter old woman who can't stand that you have a life without her. The bank has recordings," I continued. "The fraud department flagged it. Do you want me to request copies, Jason? So you can hear your wife pretending to be your attorney, claiming I have dementia?" Crystal's face went from red to white. "You can't prove anything. I can prove all of it. The question is whether I will." I looked at Jason. "I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to protect you. And Emma. Crystal has been systematically stealing from your family while making you both believe you're struggling financially. You're not struggling because of bad luck or low income. You're struggling because your wife is a thief." "Jason, don't listen to her." Crystal grabbed his arm. "She's trying to break us up because she's jealous, because she's alone and miserable and wants you to be alone too. If you believe her, I'll leave. I'll take Emma, and you'll never see your daughter again." There it was, the threat, the manipulation. Jason pulled his arm away. "Did you steal from Emma's trust?" he asked quietly. "I borrowed from it for expenses. That's what it's for. $67,000 worth of Louis Vuitton bags and spa weekends are not baby expenses," I said. "I have the receipts." Crystal turned on me, her face contorted with genuine hatred now. "You're going to regret this. I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone you're an abusive monster who abandoned her own granddaughter. I'll make sure Emma never knows you. You'll stop talking," Jason said, and his voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard. "Get in the car." "Jason, get in the car." Crystal looked between us, realized she'd lost this round, and stalked back to the vehicle, slamming the door hard enough to make the frame shudder. Jason turned to me, his eyes red. "Is it all true?" "Every word." How much do you actually have?" "Enough to live comfortably. Enough that I never needed to be your live-in maid. I did it because I loved you and wanted to help." He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his face. "I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have defended you. "You should have asked questions," I said gently. But we'll deal with that later. Right now, you need to protect your daughter and yourself. Legally, financially. I don't know where to start. I handed him Martin's business card. Start here. He'll help you secure Emma's remaining trust funds and file for divorce if that's what you choose. Whatever you decide, I support you. But Jason? Crystal doesn't get access to my money, my house, or my life. Ever. Are we clear? Crystal, he said firmly. I understand. They left, Crystal shooting daggers at me through the car window. I watched them go, then closed my door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. I'd done it. I'd exposed the truth. But victory felt hollow when my son was collateral damage. I took the next 3 days off work, truly off. No emails, no calls. I gardened, read novels, cooked elaborate meals for one. Let myself process the grief of what my family had become. By the 4th day, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The attempt to lure me back came exactly 1 week later. A text from an unknown number. Elizabeth, this is Crystal. I know you hate me, but can we please talk? Not for me, for Emma. She's been crying for her grandmother. She needs you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. 2 hours later, another text, this time from Jason. Mom, I know things are complicated, but Emma really is asking for you. Could you at least come see her? Please? This one was harder to ignore. My granddaughter, the innocent in all of this. But I knew manipulation when I saw it, and using a baby as an emotional weapon was perhaps the oldest trick in the book. I texted back, when you've made legal decisions about your marriage and secured Emma's finances, we can discuss visits. Not before. That evening, Crystal herself showed up at my door. Alone this time. I watched through the peephole as she arranged her face into an expression of contrition, even managed to make her eyes red and puffy as if she'd been crying. I didn't open the door. Elizabeth, please, she called through the wood. I know you're home. I can see your car. I just want to apologize. Really apologize. I was horrible to you. I was stressed and overwhelmed, and I took it out on you, and I'm so sorry. I remained silent. I know you probably think I'm a terrible person, but I'm not. I made mistakes. The credit cards, I have a shopping addiction. I'm working on it. The bank thing, that was a misunderstanding. I panicked when you left, and I just wanted to make sure you were okay financially. The lies flowed so smoothly. If I hadn't seen her true face, heard the venom in her voice when she called me a burden, I might almost believe her remorse was genuine. Jason's talking about divorce, she continued, her voice breaking now. I'll lose everything. I'll lose Emma. Please, Elizabeth. You're a mother. You know what it's like to love your child. Help me. Talk to Jason. Tell him you forgive me. I'll pay back every penny. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't let him take my baby away. I watched her through the peephole. This young woman who'd underestimated me so catastrophically. She actually thought an apology would work. She thought tears and promises would make me forget the contempt in her voice, the theft, the lies. Elizabeth? Her voice turned sharper, the mask slipping. I know you're there. This silent treatment is childish. We're both adults. Open the damn door. I smiled grimly and walked away, heading to my bedroom at the back of the house where I couldn't hear her anymore. Eventually, she gave up. I watched from my bedroom window as she drove away, her face twisted with rage. But their attempts to manipulate me had an unexpected benefit. They confirmed I was doing the right thing. Every message, every fake apology, every threat only strengthened my resolve. What I needed now was support. Real support, from people who understood. I called my colleague and friend, Patricia Weber. We'd worked together for 15 years, had seen each other through divorces, illnesses, triumphs. If anyone would understand, it was her. "Elizabeth, I've been wondering where you disappeared to," she said when she answered. "You've been dodging my lunch invitations." "I've had some family drama," I admitted. "Are you free for coffee this week?" "How about right now? I'll come to you." An hour later, we sat in my living room with wine instead of coffee, and I told her everything. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to anger to something like admiration. "You exposed her," she said when I finished. "Good. Women like that. They count on people being too polite, too uncomfortable to call them out. You did the hard thing. I feel like I destroyed my son's marriage." "No," Patricia said firmly. "She destroyed it herself. You just held up a mirror, and honestly, Jason's lucky you intervened before she could do worse damage. Steal more money. Forge his signature on something catastrophic. He's not speaking to me much. A few texts about Emma, but nothing real. He needs time to process. His whole reality just imploded. But Elizabeth, he'll come around. Sons always do. And when he does, he'll realize you saved him." "What if he doesn't?" Patricia took my hand. "Then you'll survive. You've survived harder things. You've built an entire life on your own terms, and nobody, not your son, not that horrible woman, can take that away from you." Her words settled something in me. She was right. I'd spent my whole life being strong, being capable, being self-sufficient. This was just one more challenge. "You know what you need?" Patricia said, refilling our wine glasses. "You need to live your life, loudly, visibly. Show them, and yourself, that you don't need their approval or their guilt or their fake apologies. You're Elizabeth Morrison, and you're magnificent." I laughed, surprising myself. Magnificent might be a stretch. "Not even a little bit," she insisted. "Now tell me about this house. I thought you sold it." I gave her the full tour, showing off the renovations I'd poured love and money into. Patricia admired every detail, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than anger or hurt. I felt proud. This was mine, my house, my success, my life, and I'd be damned if I'd let anyone make me feel small for it again. They came together this time, both of them, on a gray Saturday morning 2 weeks later. I was in my garden, planting winter pansies, when I heard the car pull up. Through the fence, I watched Jason and Crystal approach, and something in their synchronized movements set off alarm bells. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, and walked to meet them at my front door before they could knock. "We need to talk," Jason said. His voice was strained, his eyes hollow. He'd lost weight, I noticed. Good. Maybe consequences were finally sinking in. "About?" "About fixing this family," Crystal said, and her smile was all sweetness and light. She'd dressed carefully, modest clothing, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, the costume of a reformed woman. "Elizabeth, I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of praying, and I realize that I wronged you terribly." "Crystal's been going to therapy," Jason added quickly. "She's really working on herself." "That's wonderful," I said neutrally, not moving aside to let them in. "We thought maybe we could all have a fresh start," Crystal continued. "Put the past behind us. You could come back, help with Emma. We'd pay you this time, of course. A proper salary for childcare." There it was. They wanted their free nanny back, only now they'd frame it as employment to make it seem legitimate. "We really need you, Mom," Jason said, and his voice cracked. "Emma misses you. I miss you. Can't we just move forward?" I studied my son's face, searching for the boy I'd raised, the man I'd thought I knew. "What did Martin tell you about Crystal's finances?" Jason shifted uncomfortably. "We're handling it." She's working on a payment plan for the trust fund. It's going to take time, but we'll make it right. What about the divorce? We're going to counseling instead, he said, for Emma's sake. She needs her mother and father together. I see. I looked at Crystal, who was watching me with barely concealed calculation behind her performative humility. And you're willing to forget everything I uncovered? The theft, the lies, the fraud? People make mistakes, Crystal said softly. I made terrible mistakes, but I'm trying to fix them. And Jason forgave me, because that's what families do. They forgive. She paused meaningfully. Isn't that what you'd want us to teach Emma? That love and forgiveness are more important than money? The manipulation was expert. Frame me as the cold, unforgiving villain. Make this about moral principles rather than criminal behavior. Actually, I said, I'd want you to teach Emma that actions have consequences, that stealing is wrong, that lying destroys trust. Crystal's smile tightened. Of course. And I'm teaching her that by making amends. But I can't do that if you're determined to keep this family broken. Jason chose to give me another chance. Why can't you respect his choice? Because your amends include trying to get me back into your house to provide free labor while you continue spending money you don't have, I said bluntly. This isn't about reconciliation. This is about convenience. That's not fair, Jason started, but Crystal put a hand on his arm. Let me, she said, and her tone changed. The sweetness evaporated. Elizabeth, let's stop playing games. You think you've won something here, don't you? You think you've exposed me and saved Jason. But look at him. She gestured at my son. He's miserable. He's barely sleeping. He's torn between his mother and his wife, and it's destroying him. Is this what you wanted? I wanted him to know the truth. The truth? Crystal laughed, cold and sharp. The truth is you're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son doesn't need you anymore. You've been hoarding money for years while pretending to be poor, playing some sick martyr game. And now you're trying to destroy my marriage because you're jealous that Jason chose me over you. Crystal. Jason tried to interrupt, but she was on a roll now. You want to talk about consequences? Fine. Here are the consequences. If you don't back off, if you don't support this marriage and apologize for the damage you've caused, you'll never see Emma again. We'll move. We'll change our numbers. You'll die alone in this house wondering if your granddaughter even remembers your name. Is that what you want? The threat hung in the air. Jason looked horrified, but said nothing. And that silence told me everything. Get off my property, I said quietly. Mom, Jason reached for me. Your wife just threatened to keep my granddaughter from me unless I enable her theft and lies. And you're standing there saying nothing, so yes, Jason. Get off my property. Both of you. You're making a mistake, Crystal hissed. You think you're powerful because you have money? Money doesn't buy family. Money doesn't buy love. You're going to end up completely alone, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. Better alone than complicit, I said, and stepped inside, closing the door in their faces. I heard Crystal's voice rise to a shout outside. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back and we won't be there. You'll... The voices faded as they walked back to their car. I watched through the window as Crystal gesticulated wildly at Jason, her mask completely gone now, her face twisted with fury. He looked defeated, diminished. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from fear. What if Crystal made good on her threat? What if I really never saw Emma again? But as I stood there, watching their car disappear down my quiet street, the fear transformed into something harder, something colder. They'd shown their hand. They'd revealed that reconciliation was never the goal. Manipulation was. Control was. They wanted me compliant and useful, or gone. Fine, I'd be gone. But I wouldn't be powerless. I picked up my phone and called Martin. I'm ready to take the next step, I said, when he answered. Whatever it takes. The family court hearing was scheduled for March 15th. Jason had finally filed for divorce, not because he wanted to, but because Crystal's creditors had started filing liens against their shared property. Turns out she'd taken out loans using his Social Security number without his knowledge. When the fraud investigation started, even Jason couldn't maintain the illusion anymore. But Crystal wasn't going quietly. She'd filed counter motions for full custody of Emma, claiming Jason was an unfit father influenced by his mentally unstable, controlling mother. She'd attached affidavits from friends describing me as obsessive, manipulative, potentially dangerous. Martin had advised me not to attend the preliminary hearing. Let Jason handle this himself. It's his marriage, his divorce. But when Crystal's lawyer submitted a motion to prevent me from any contact with Emma pending a psychological evaluation, Martin changed his tune. "Now they've made it about you," he said grimly. "We need to respond. Are you willing to testify?" Absolutely. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, less dramatic. But the tension was thick as I entered. Crystal sat with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman who looked expensive. Money Crystal didn't have, which raised questions about who was funding her defense. Jason sat across from them with his lawyer, looking exhausted. When he saw me, something complicated crossed his face. Shame? Relief? I couldn't tell. Crystal saw me and leaned to whisper urgently to her attorney. I took my seat behind Jason's side and waited. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Hernandez, reviewed the motions with brisk efficiency. "Ms. Vance, your attorney has filed concerning allegations about the paternal grandmother, Elizabeth Morrison. You claim she poses a danger to the minor child?" Crystal stood, hands clasped together, picture of concern. "Yes, Your Honor. Elizabeth has shown increasingly erratic behavior. She hired private investigators to spy on me. She makes wild accusations about my character, and she's trying to turn my husband against me. I'm genuinely worried about what she might do if given unsupervised access to my daughter." "Your Honor," Martin stood smoothly, "Ms. Morrison is here today and can address these allegations directly. We also have extensive documentation regarding Ms. Vance's actual behavior that contexts everything." Judge Hernandez looked at me. "Ms. Morrison, you're welcome to speak." I stood, keeping my voice calm and clear. "Your Honor, I hired an investigator because Crystal Vance attempted to fraudulently access my bank accounts by claiming to have power of attorney and stating I was mentally incompetent. When the bank blocked her, I wanted to understand what else she might be capable of. What I discovered was a pattern of financial fraud against me, against my son, and against her own daughter's trust fund." Crystal's lawyer jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. These are unsubstantiated accusations." "They're documented," Martin interrupted, handing a thick folder to the bailiff. "Bank records, credit card statements, loan applications with forged signatures, police reports, all authenticated." The judge took the folder and began reading. The courtroom went very quiet. I watched Crystal's face cycle through emotions: anger, fear, calculation. "Ms. Vance," Judge Hernandez said, after several minutes, "according to these documents, you withdrew $38,000 from your daughter's education trust without authorization. You also applied for multiple loans using your husband's information without his consent. And there's a documented attempt to access Ms. Morrison's accounts fraudulently. Would you like to explain?" She's twisting everything." Crystal's composure cracked. "That money from Emma's trust was for Emma, for her needs, and I only tried to access Elizabeth's accounts because Jason told me she was struggling financially and was too proud to ask for help. I was trying to help her." "I never said that," Jason spoke up quietly. "I never said my mother was struggling. You told me she was poor. I believed you because she dressed modestly and drove an old car. I never investigated her finances because why would I?" "You're lying!" Crystal turned on him. "You wanted me to deal with your mother so you didn't have to. You were embarrassed by her. Ms. Vance, please control yourself, the judge warned. But Crystal was spiraling now, the mask fully off. This is all her fault. She came into our lives with her martyr act, playing poor, judging us, and then suddenly she's rich and powerful and trying to destroy me. She's a manipulative bitch who can't stand that Jason chose me. That's enough. Judge Hernandez's gavel cracked down. Ms. Vance, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Crystal collapsed into her chair, shaking. Her lawyer looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. The judge turned to me. Ms. Morrison, you mentioned Ms. Vance called you names and demanded you leave their home? Yes, Your Honor. She said I was an embarrassment, a burden, that I was penniless and desperate, that she didn't want her daughter growing up with her charity case grandmother in the house. She said I was humiliating them. And you left voluntarily? I did. I had no desire to stay where I wasn't wanted. But you maintain you want a relationship with your granddaughter? Very much, Your Honor. Emma is innocent in all this. I love her deeply. Judge Hernandez made notes, then looked at Crystal. Ms. Vance, I'm going to be direct. The evidence suggests you've committed multiple instances of fraud, theft, and defamation. You've stolen from your own child. You've attempted to steal from your mother-in-law, and you've lied about multiple facts material to this case. I'm denying your motion for full custody. In fact, I'm restricting your custody to supervised visitation pending a full forensic accounting of all marital assets and the child's trust fund. Crystal's face went white. You can't. I can and I am. Mr. Morrison will have primary physical custody. Ms. Morrison, she looked at me. I see no evidence you pose any danger to the child. In fact, you appear to be the only adult in this situation who's been acting in the child's best interest. You're welcome to see your granddaughter whenever Mr. Morrison permits. Crystal stood up, shaking. This isn't over. I'll appeal. You'll sit down, the judge said flatly. And Ms. Vance? I'm referring these documents to the district attorney's office. You may be facing criminal charges. Court adjourned. The gavel fell with finality. The district attorney's office moved faster than I expected. Within 3 weeks, Crystal was arrested on multiple counts: identity theft, financial exploitation of an elderly person, fraud, and embezzlement from a trust. The bail was set at $100,000, money she didn't have and couldn't raise. Jason called me the day after her arrest. Mom, can I come over? Of course. He arrived with Emma, who'd grown so much in the month since I'd seen her. She didn't remember me at first, shy against her father's shoulder, but when I pulled out an old toy I'd kept from Jason's childhood, she reached for it with chubby hands. We sat in my living room, Emma playing on the floor between us, and Jason finally broke. I'm so sorry, he said, and started crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. You tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. I let her say those horrible things to you. I stood by while she threw you out. I believed her lies about you being poor because it was easier than asking questions. I was lazy and stupid and cruel, and you didn't deserve any of it. I moved to sit beside him, pulling him into a hug like I hadn't done since he was small. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That's not an excuse. I'm your son. I should have defended you. I should have known you better than that. Yes, I agreed, because he needed to hear it. You should have. But Jason, you're fixing it now. You're protecting Emma. You're being the father she needs. Crystal's lawyer says she'll probably get jail time, 2 to 5 years. And I'm relieved. Does that make me terrible? It makes you human. She hurt you. She hurt Emma. She hurt me. Consequences are appropriate. He wiped his eyes. Her parents called yesterday, demanded I drop the charges, said I was ruining their daughter's life. I hung up on them. Good. They don't know about her record, Mom. About the stuff in Florida. I told them. They said I was lying. They think I'm the villain here. Some people will never see the truth, I said. That's their problem, not yours. Over the next weeks, the full scope of Crystal's deceptions unraveled. the private investigator Rita had found was just the beginning. The DA's forensic accountants discovered $127,000 in debt accumulated in Jason's name without his knowledge, forged documents for 3 separate car loans, a second secret credit card Crystal had been using to send money to a boyfriend Jason didn't know existed, falsified tax returns that put Jason at risk of IRS audits, withdrawal of nearly all of Emma's trust fund, with the money funneled into offshore accounts in Crystal's maiden name. Jason had to file for bankruptcy to protect himself from Crystal's debts. His credit was destroyed. But slowly, methodically, Martin helped him rebuild. I quietly paid off Emma's medical bills and created a new trust fund for her, one with ironclad protections and independent trustees. Crystal's trial was swift. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of postpartum depression and shopping addiction, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge gave her 4 years in state prison, with restitution ordered for every penny she'd stolen. She'd be out when Emma was in kindergarten, old enough to ask questions Jason would have to figure out how to answer. When Crystal was led away in handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. The hatred in her eyes was pure and absolute. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph. Just a deep, bone-deep relief that it was over. Jason was granted full legal and physical custody of Emma. Crystal would have supervised visits only after completing parenting classes and therapy. Her parents stopped calling after the sentencing. 3 months after the trial, Jason asked if he and Emma could move into my house temporarily while he rebuilt his finances. I said yes, with conditions. He'd pay market-rate rent, he'd maintain his own space, and he'd attend counseling to process everything he'd been through. "Mom," he said, as we signed the rental agreement Martin had drawn up, "why are you charging me rent?" "Because you're a grown man, not a charity case. Because you need to learn that accepting help doesn't mean being helpless. And because someday, when you're back on your feet, you'll remember that you earned your way back, not that I rescued you." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Besides," I added more gently, "you need to learn to ask for help when you need it, but also to stand on your own when you can. Those aren't contradictory things, Jason. They're both important." Emma toddled over and grabbed my leg, looking up with her father's eyes. "Gamma?" she said, her first word for me. My heart melted. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm Grandma." Jason watched us with tears in his eyes. "I'm going to do better, Mom, I promise. I'm going to be someone you can be proud of again." "I never stopped being proud of you," I said. "I was disappointed, I was hurt. But I never stopped loving you. And I never stopped believing you could be better." He hugged me then, and Emma squirmed between us, and I thought, this is what victory looks like. Not Crystal in prison, that was just justice. This was victory. My family, broken and healing, but together. My son, humbled but learning. My granddaughter, safe and loved. I had won. Not because I'd destroyed my enemy, but because I'd protected what mattered. 1 year later, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. Jason had moved out 6 months prior into a modest apartment he could actually afford. He'd completed credit counseling, started therapy, and been promoted at the dealership. He brought Emma every Sunday for pancakes, garden time, and stories. Simple. Precious. "You seem different," Patricia commented one Sunday afternoon. "Lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "I spent so many years being careful, being quiet. And then I realized, what was I protecting myself from? I'd made myself small for no reason. And now? Now I take up space." I gestured around my beautiful home, the expanded garden, the new patio. "I'm living my life out loud." I'd made other changes too. New car, updated wardrobe, started dating a kind man who found my competence attractive. I'd established the scholarship fund with $500,000 to help single mothers pursue finance careers. My consulting practice was thriving. Life was full, rich, mine. Jason and I rebuilt our relationship slowly through joint therapy sessions. Emma's going to grow up knowing her grandmother is successful, I told him. I'm not hiding anymore. I don't want her thinking being smart or financially independent is something to be ashamed of. I want her to grow up like you, Mom, strong, not taking crap from anyone. Meanwhile, Crystal's life had imploded. Prison was brutal. Multiple disciplinary incidents, no support from inmates who despised child thieves. Her parents had seen evidence of her Florida fraud and gone silent. The boyfriend she'd been sending money to never existed, just fake accounts she'd planned to access after divorcing Jason. All seized. Most devastating, Emma didn't remember her. At 4 years was an eternity. By the time Crystal got out, her daughter would be 7. I didn't take pleasure in her suffering, but I didn't feel guilty either. One evening, Jason called. Crystal wants to sign away her parental rights in exchange for not pursuing full restitution. She's trading Emma away to dodge debt. I went very still. And? I told him to draw up the papers. Emma deserves a mother who fights for her. His voice cracked. Am I doing the right thing? Yes, I said firmly. You're protecting your daughter from someone who would have used and manipulated her. You're being a good father. After we hung up, I stood in my beautiful kitchen and felt grateful. Not for Crystal's downfall, but for my own rise. For standing up for myself. For refusing to be diminished. I'd won. Not just legally, but wholly. My life was proof that you don't have to accept being treated badly. That walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. And Emma? She was growing up with an example of what women could be. Strong, independent, successful, kind. She'd never make herself small to please others. That was victory. That was everything. So what did I learn from all this? That silence is often mistaken for weakness. That being underestimated can be a gift. It reveals who people truly are. That family loyalty should never mean accepting abuse. I learned that you teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. My life became infinitely better when I stopped making myself small, when I stopped pretending to be less than I was, when I demanded respect instead of hoping someone would grant it. Would I have chosen this path? No. The pain of my son's betrayal still aches. But given the choice between being comfortable in their contempt or standing alone in my truth, I'd choose truth every single time. What would you have done? Would you have stayed silent? Would you have fought back? Would you have forgiven too easily or held the line? Think about it. And if this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding strength when life tests you. Thank you for listening to mine.